So today's class is all about the posterior chain. And what is that? The posterior chain is a term that refers to all of the muscles down the back side of your body, from the back of your head all the way down to your heels. Hamstrings, glutes, calves, latissimus dorsi, traps, erector spinae, multifidus. Those are just some examples. The posterior chain is a powerhouse, and these muscles are some of the strongest in your entire body. And it plays a huge role in everyday activities such as sitting up, sitting down, jumping, bending down, all things we need to do. And as we gain strength through the functional movements, sometimes at the gym, especially in movements like deadlifts or squats, at times people notice that they're losing flexibility around their hips or their hamstrings or their back. And this is because when muscle fibers are strengthened, they're also shortened. And this can put them at risk for being torn during weightlifting or resistance training, or sometimes everyday activities. And so a recovery stretch is crucial as those muscles are healing and getting stronger post-workout. When yoga is done properly, it can aid in reducing tension and tightness that can build up. And if not mobilized properly, tightness can affect your form, it can lead to injury, inefficient lifts, and affect your everyday movements. So, let's get into it. And if you're not already there, we're going to start in child's pose, knees wide and feet together, walking your hands out in front of you. Letting the day go, melting into the mat, opening the chest, dropping it toward the mat. Inhaling and exhaling. Not worrying about the person you were yesterday or the athlete you were yesterday, and just coming to the mat as you are today, not as the person you want to be tomorrow. Maybe walking your hands a little bit farther forward if you want a deeper stretch. Inhaling and exhaling. On your next inhale, we're going to walk our hands to the left. Right arm reaches a little higher. Feeling that stretch all the way down that latissimus dorsi. Maybe into the shoulder. Maybe even into the hip, depending on how tight you are. Inhale and exhale. Walk your hands across on your next inhale. Left hand reaches a little higher. Noticing what side feels a little tighter here. Where do you feel a stretch? Exhale back to center. Maybe dropping your chest a little bit closer. Chin or forehead to the mat just to stretch out the chest a little bit more. And on your next inhale, rolling up to a tabletop. Inhale, belly button to spine, pushing up into your shoulder blades. We're stretching into the erector spinae muscles and the multifidus. Exhale, dropping the chest through the arms, hollowing out the back. Going through this cat-cow, inhaling up and exhaling down. Feeling that nice stretch as you push up into your back. Pushing into the ground, exhaling down. Inhale. And exhale, maybe adding in some little left and right movements here, trying to make it whatever your body is calling for today. And we're going to move to stretch the calf muscle out. So in that lower leg, the gastrocnemius or the gastroc is the larger calf muscle, and it kind of forms that bulge that you can see beneath your skin. It has two heads that come together in a diamond shape. And then there's also the soleus, which is that smaller flat muscle that kind of lies beneath that big muscle. And together, they plantar flex. And so what plantar flexion is it's that movement when the top of your foot points away from your leg. So you can think of it like when you do a calf raise. So we're just stretching out this calf muscle. These two muscles, the gastroc and the soleus, they're really powerful. They also work to flex the knee. And when you run, jump, walk, they can produce but also take a significant amount of force, resulting in them getting really tight. So we're going to stretch them out just to begin with, but we're going to do a couple other poses that just work them as well. Coming back into that tabletop. And we're just going to grab some blocks. So if you don't have any, you can just use some books. I just like to have them next to me just to help. But if you don't have them, it's not a big deal. So we're going to grab those blocks now, and we're going to stretch out our triceps. And it also gets into a little bit of the posterior delts. Again, if you don't have books, you can do this on a chair. Just put your arms on the seat, or you can do it on the wall even. Dropping your chest through. Inhaling and exhaling. Remembering not to push it too far. I have very mobile shoulders, so you might need to modify this pose and not push your chest so far down. Always do what feels right to you. Your yoga doesn't have to look like the person next to you, whether you're in a class or whether you're doing a video. So we're just going to set the blocks aside. And we're going to push into a puppy pose. So the hips are going to be high, and we're going to drop the chest toward the mat. This is kind of like child's pose, but our hips are up. Again, I've dropped my chest and put my chin on the mat, but you don't have to. You can just be leaning toward that. Inhaling and exhaling. So we're stretching out the spine a little bit more. And we're going to come back into this tabletop. Moving the hands forward, gripping into the mat, curling the toes, and pushing back into our first downward dog, engaging the core, walking the legs out. Feet are hip length distance apart. And you want your chest, your shoulders, and your hips all in one line, wrapping your triceps so it feels like your armpits are facing each other, and all the weight should be in that inner triad of your fingers, thumb, pointer finger, and middle finger. One of the most common range of motion problems is that athletes will have poorly mobilized posterior chain. Many athletes will just say, oh, I have really tight hamstrings, but it's often more than just their hamstrings, it's that entire posterior chain. So for example, attempting a kettlebell swing and you drop into a squat, or your lumbar spine is rounding when you compensate with an exaggerate posterior pelvic tilt in that first phase of a deadlift. So downward dog and three-legged dog not only decompress and neutralize the spine, but with that consistent practice, it can work on correcting some of those movement faults. You can also use this before or after your training as a little bit more of a functional warm-up or cool down. Inhale, three-legged dog. You can open up your hips here and just reach away like you're trying to grab something or touch something. Knee to chest. Exhale, drop that foot in between your hands and drop the back knee. We're going to grab our blocks one more time. If you don't have blocks, you can just put your hands on your hips. It's absolutely fine. Left hip pulls forward, right hip pulls back, and we're going to rock on the heel, toes pulling toward the face. You might need to play around with the block heights if you have them. We're going to keep our spine extended. That right hip is sucking into the socket, and we want to stretch out the hamstring here, keeping a micro bend in the knee. So we're not stretching into the joint, we're stretching into the muscles. You might be much higher than me, and that's totally fine. Inhaling, you extend the spine. Exhale, you drop it. And that might be no discernible movement. That just kind of is the way your movements are going, the way your breath is going. Inhaling and exhaling. Left hip is still pulling forward, right hip is still pulling back. If you want a little bit of powerful movement, you can try to raise that right heel off the mat. Good. And exhale, just get rid of the blocks. If you find that you're melting into the pose a little bit, you might find that one side is also much different than the other. As you'll see, my right hamstring is very mobile, my left not so much. That's why I really like these single leg stretches, because we look very symmetrical, but we're very asymmetrical. A couple more breaths here. And starting to rock back and forth. Low lunge to half split, low lunge. Left hand inside of the right foot, and we're just going to open up into this low lunge twist. Parivrtta Anjaneyasana, opening up with the chest. That right shoulder should be down away from your ear, looking up toward the sky, framing that front foot, curling the back toes, high plank, looking forward, chaturanga, elbows in, hands underneath the shoulders, shoulders back and down, pulling the belly button through. If you feel this in your low spine, just lower down a little bit. And we're going to raise our hands off the mat if you can. We're really working into those erector spinae and the multifidus, squeezing the shoulder blades, so also the traps. Pushing the chest toward the thigh, downward facing dog. Walking the legs out. Inhale and exhale, setting yourself back in your downward facing dog. We always reset here. Gripping into the mat, wrapping the triceps, left toes toward the sky, opening the hips, reaching away. Maybe even bending into the knee, looking underneath that left armpit if you'd like. Exhale, knee forward, dropping the foot, dropping the back knee, grabbing your blocks if you need. Left hip pulls back in the socket this time, right hip pulls forward, rocking on the heel, toes pull toward the face, extending through the spine, so we're hinging at the hip here. This ensures we stretch into the hamstring, keeping that micro bend in the knee. You'll notice here I'm much less mobile, as I said, so don't ever think that one side should be the same as the other. Never try to push it to be the same either. You need to work with both sides separately. Inhaling and exhaling. You might find as you go through, you might drop the blocks as you get a little bit more mobile, a little bit more movement. Inhale, you extend. Exhale, you drop the chest. Inhale and exhale. If you want an extra challenge, you can try to raise that left heel, still pulling that left hip back in the socket. Exhale, starting to rock. You can go slow, you can go fast, whatever feels right. Right hand inside that left foot. We're opening up to the left here, spinning through the spine, so through the thoracic. You might even feel a bit of a glute stretch here. Opening up. So we're stretching into that posterior chain, just opening through a twist. Curling the back toes, high plank, looking forward, rocking your weight forward, chaturanga, dropping one line, shoulders back and down, cobra, exhale, downward facing dog. Sit bones toward the back wall, tiptoeing up to your hands. You'll feel this stretch as you walk up, forward fold. So we're going to grab opposite elbows here, and we're going to round into the spine this time because we're stretching into the spinal muscles. You might not be this low, and that's fine. Maybe rocking left and right. Should release a little bit of the tension off your hamstrings in this stretch, although you might still feel a bit of a stretch here. Inhale and exhale. We're going to hinge at the hips, straightening out the back. You can have your hands on the mat, or you might have them on your shins or your quads. Depends how flexible you are. Doesn't matter how low you go, that's not the point. As you can see, I'm pretty flexible, but it's because I've started much higher. Inhaling and exhaling. You can stay here, stretching it out. Inhale, you extend that spine. Exhale, drop a little bit closer towards your thighs, bending into the knees. Inhale, rolling up to standing Tadasana, one vertebrae at a time. Inhale, fingertips toward the sky, and we're going to grab our hands together and stretch to the right. Hips go left. Exhale, switch sides. Stretching into those lats, the lower fibers of the traps. Stepping up to the top of the mat, right foot to the top, left foot back. Hips are still forward, and we're hinging forward at the hips, micro bend in that front knee. We're coming into a pyramid pose. You might need your hands on blocks here, or you might like a block underneath that front foot to stretch out the calf even more. Keeping that spine straight, left hip is pulling forward, right hip is pulling back. We don't want to open up to the left here. Inhale, you extend. Exhale, you drop. We're stretching out the hamstrings, stretching out the glutes. You might have your hands on your hips here. Just figuring out what feels right for you. So I'm showing you just a couple of options. There is no right way. The right way is so you feel you can sustainably hold the stretch for as long as we do it. Inhaling and exhaling, pushing that left foot toward the sky for just a standing split here. Again, your leg does not have to be this high. It might be a foot off the ground, and that's fine. Forward fold, exhale. Maybe you've noticed one leg feels a little different, rolling up to standing. Tadasana, exhale, Urdhva Hastasana. We're going to do those side bends again. Exhale, right hip goes left. To the other side. Left foot forward, right foot back, hips are forward. Left hip pulls back in the socket, right hip pulls forward. Micro bend in that front knee. Chin drops toward that shin. You notice that I use blocks on this side but not the other, and that's absolutely fine. Inhaling and exhaling. Gathering those pieces of information. What side feels tighter? How does it feel different? And knowing how to modify these things will make you just a better athlete and stronger overall. Inhale and exhale. Exhale, pushing that right toes toward the sky. You can almost grab behind the calf if you want a deeper stretch. But if you just prefer to leave both hands on the mat, just do it. That's fine. Dropping both legs. Forward fold. Uttasana. Inhale and exhale. Half forward fold. You can start to flatten out that back. Exhale, forward fold. Bending into the knees, rolling one vertebrae at a time up to standing Tadasana. Working these retractions have a really functional component, and they work with posture and active movements of muscles to tilt and turn the head, shrug, steady the shoulders, twist the arms. Inhaling up and exhaling down, forward fold. Stepping or jumping back, high plank, chaturanga. Inhale, cobra, shoulders back and down, belly button pulls forward. Raising the hands if you can, squeezing the thighs together. Engaging, exhale, drop down. Downward facing dog, stepping back, resetting. Inhale, right toes point toward the sky, reaching away. And knee to chest, bringing that right leg through to pigeon. This pose increases the external range of motion of the femur and the hip socket. Stretch out the glutes, lengthen the hip flexors. However, if you have any knee injuries or sacroiliac joint injuries, this pose might not be for you. For the deepest stretch, your right shin should be parallel to the front of the mat, but depending on how tight your hips are, your right foot might be closer to your left hip. Keep that right foot flexed. Extend your left back leg. Roll the front of your left hip so your hips are square to the ground. Breathing in and out slowly through your nose. Stay with the stretch. You should feel that intense stretch in your glute, walking your hands forward. Maybe resting your forehead to the mat. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhale and exhale. Keeping that left hip pulled forward in the socket, right hip pulling back so your hips are neutral. As I said before, you're suspended, so you might not even be this high. You might not be able to put your forehead to the mat. Maybe your forehead goes on top of a block. Just finding the height that's right for you. This also can be done on your back if you have any knee or sacroiliac joint injuries. Pushing up, framing that front knee. Curling the back toes, thinking about the movement you're going to do in downward facing dog. One movement. Resetting. Inhale. Exhale, rolling forward and dropping the knees. Curling the back toes. And we're going to go into a camel between both sides. There's a couple of different options for hand placements. I've started at the medium level, but you can start in the beginners, resting your hands on the back of your pelvis, base of the palms, touching the buttocks. Fingers pointing down. opening through the chest, rotating your thighs inward slightly. Exhale back to downward facing dog, curling the toes, chest toward the thighs, gripping into the mat. Exhale, vinyasa. Shoulders back and down, raising the hands, squeezing the shoulder blades. Downward facing dog. Left toes toward the sky, reaching away, knee to chest. Pigeon on the other side. Remembering everything we discussed. Left hip pulls back in the socket this time. Right hip pulls forward, suspending between both hips. Remembering that one side may be completely different than the other. You can use a block underneath your glute, as I have done, to just rest into the pose so it doesn't feel so pulling, especially if you feel tight. Inhaling, exhaling, melting down. Inhale and exhale. Poses like this sometimes are very uncomfortable, and you might find it hard to sit here for a while, so you want to make sure you find the height that you're able to sustain for so long. Inhale and exhale, pushing up, framing that front knee, curling the back toes. If you need to take the block out, do so. Moving back to downward dog in one swift movement. Setting yourself. Dropping the knees, going back into our camel. So as you can see here, my hands are on my hips. My fingers are not pointed down toward my buttock, which is my mistake. But I also prefer to have my hands on my heels, opening through your chest. Inhale, exhale. You can drop down if you feel open enough, but it should be moving through your chest. It should not all be coming from your lower back. And if you want to engage your posterior chain using your back muscles, you can take your hands off your feet. Always doing a counter pose. So we're curling into our child's pose there and then into downward dog. Vinyasa, chaturanga, cobra, shoulders back and down. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, rolling forward, dropping the knees, sitting back, and coming into a comfortable seated position. And we're going to come into cow face pose. So we can stack our knees. If not, you can come into a box pose. So your shins are stacked instead of your knees. And we're just going to reach forward. This is really stretching out the hips, making sure both glutes are melted into the mat. You don't want one to be wonky, too high. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhale, exhale, maybe reaching a little farther forward. Walking your hands to the left, feeling how the stretch changes, maybe walking them to the right. And you might not be this low, and that's totally okay. And we're just going to switch sides, so we're just going to keep our feet in the same place, twisting around, and the opposite leg should be on top. If that's too complicated for you, just put the opposite leg on top. That's totally fine. And do the same thing, reaching away. You might notice that one side you can't reach as far, and that's fine. You should really respect how your body feels today and not push it to be the same as the other side. That's when we get the best results. Inhale and exhale. Unraveling and coming to lay on your back into the mat. Rocking down, good. Maybe making circles with your knees. Maybe rocking left and right or up and down. We're going to go into happy baby. grabbing the outer edges of your feet, knees are coming towards your armpits, maybe rocking left and right. If this doesn't feel good on your hips, just go back to hug your knees. And just play around here, feeling that nice stretch through your hips. Starting to relax. Inhale and exhale. Rocking up and rocking down. So we're going to be coming into a plow pose. With your toes on the floor, lift your tops of your thighs away toward the ceiling, drawing your inner groin deep into the pelvis. Your chin draws away from your sternum and softening the throat. You can press into your hands or you can grasp them behind your back. However, there are some contradictions to this pose, and if you're new and you have diarrhea, menstruation, neck injury, asthma or high blood pressure, pregnancy, and you are not experienced with this pose, then this pose might not be for you. To make it better, you can put your feet on a chair behind you just to decrease the range of motion. However, it's always important to note that yoga poses can be dangerous like anything. So you should always look at the contradictions if you feel a pose is wrong. Safely rocking back, hugging your knees, and melting down to your Savasana, palms toward the sky, soles of the feet together, legs out straight. Starting to relax your face, melting down into the mat. In this moment, just allowing yourself to breathe, allowing yourself to embrace, giving yourself permission to be in this moment, to let go. Now taking a moment to survey your body, maybe adjusting it to make it feel comfortable. Gently inhale and exhale, allowing your body to soften, melting down your muscles, your bones, letting the earth beneath support you. You have nowhere to be, nothing to do. Feeling your abdomen rise and then fall on each inhale and exhale. Dissolving down, experiencing the body as an effortless breath. Finding this time to renew and recharge. Namaste is a universally recognized saying, one of peace and honor and respect. In Sanskrit it means, I bow to you, that my light recognizes your light, and our lights are the same. So thank you so much for joining me. Namaste.